let's start to make an MCP server for our CLI chatbot. As you saw, the CLI itself already works, and we can already chat with Claude, but there's no additional functionality around an MCP server tied to it just yet. So we're going to work on adding in this MCP server that is going to have two tools in it for right now. It's going to have one tool to read a document and one tool to update the contents of a document. The implementation of the server is going to be placed into the MCP server.py file inside of the root project directory. Inside of here, I've already gone through a little bit of work to set up a basic MCP server. And then I defined a collection of documents that are going to exist only in memory. And then finally, I put together some different to-do items. So these are different tasks that you and I are going to complete inside of this file. For right now, as I just mentioned, we're going to be working only on these first two items, writing out two tools. Now, we have authored tools in the past, and we saw that, well, there's a lot of syntax there. There's those big JSON schemas. But I got good news for you here. In this project, we're making use of the official MCP Python SDK. So that's what this MCP package is that we're making use inside of here. This MCP package is going to create our MCP server for us with just one line of code, like what you see right there. This SDK also makes it really easy to define tools. To define a tool, all we have to do is write out what you see on the right-hand side over here. This will make a tool named addIntegers with this description and two arguments that are going to be required to be passed into it. Once we write out a tool definition like this, behind the scenes, MCP is going to generate a tool JSON schema for us, which we can take and pass off to Claude. So right away, as you can see, it starts to get a lot easier to do some basic things like define tools. Now, as I mentioned, our first task is going to be to implement these two different tools. So let's go back over to our MCP server.py file right away, and we're going to start to implement the first tool of reading a document. So the only goal here is to take in the name of some document and return the contents of it. All of our documents are already placed inside of this docs dictionary. The keys are the IDs, or essentially names of a document, and the value is the document's contents. So our tool is really simple. We're going to take in one of these strings, look up the appropriate value inside this docs dictionary, and then return it. That's all we need to do. So to implement this, I'm going to find the first to-do, and right underneath it, I'm going to define a new tool by writing out @mcp.tool. I'm going to give this tool a name of read_doc_contents and a description of read the contents of a document and return it as a string. And remember, in a perfect world, we would put in a really fleshed out description right here to make sure it's super clear to Claude exactly when to use this tool. But for right now, just as usual, to save a little bit of time and keep you from having to type out a bunch of text here, I'm just going to leave in a very simple description. Then I will define my actual tool function. So this is the function to run whenever we decide to run this tool. I will call it read document. It's going to take in an argument of doc ID that is going to be a string. I'm going to set that to a field with a description of ID of the document to read. And then we need to make sure that we import this field class at the top. So I'm going to go up to the top and add an import from Pydantic import field. Then back down here, inside of the function body, I'm going to put in my actual implementation. So the first thing I'm going to do is just make sure I handle the case in which Claude asks for a document that doesn't actually exist. So I'll say if doc ID not in docs. So in other words, if the provided document ID is not found as a key inside of this dictionary, then I'm going to raise a value error with a f string of doc with ID, doc ID not found. And then if we get past that check, I'll go ahead and return the actual document. So I'll return docs at doc ID. And that's it. That's all it takes to define a tool. So we've specified the name of the tool, its description, the argument that is expected, its type, and a description for that argument as well. All these different decorators and field types and whatnot are all going to be taken together by this Python MCP SDK, and it's going to generate a JSON schema for us. Now that we've implemented this first tool, I'm going to remove the to-do right there, and then we will implement our other tool, the one to edit a document. So we're going to repeat the exact same process. I'll say mcp.tool. I'll give it a name of edit document with a description of edit a document by replacing a string in the document's content with a new string. Then for the implementation, I'll call this function edit doc. Actually, we'll be consistent, call it edit document. And then we're going to take in a couple of different arguments here. First is going to be a document ID, and then a old string to find, and then a new string to replace the old string with. So let's write this all out. We're going to have a doc ID that will be a string with a description of ID of the document that will be edited. Old string will be a string with a description of the text to replace must match exactly, including white space. And then our new string, the new text to insert in place of the old text. So our document editing here is just a very simple find and replace. That's it. Once again, inside of here, I'm going to make sure that Claude is asking for a document that actually exists. So if doc ID not in docs, raise value error with a f string of doc with ID not found. And then if we do find the correct document, here's how we will do our edit. We'll say docs at doc ID is docs at doc ID, replace old string with the new string. And that's it. All right, so just like that, we have put together two tool implementations really, really quickly. I can't repeat it enough. Defining tools with this MCP Python SDK is a lot easier than writing out the schema definition manually. Now that we've got both tools put together, I'm going to delete the to-do right there. Okay, so this is a good start. We have put together our MCP server and we've implemented two tools inside of it.